Hello, this is the Casual Author Podcast. I'm Dan Kenner, sci-fi and fantasy author. I've got a few things on my plate, as do you, and I want to help you be productive and have a positive mindset as you navigate your passion for writing while managing life's expectations. For more information about the podcast or to access my free guide, How to Have the Most Stellar Writing Sessions, head to thecasualauthor.com. Let's dive in. Hey there, it's Dan Kenner with episode number 164 of the podcast. Today is Friday, February 20th, 2026, as I record this, and I'm looking forward to talking to you about how you may need to adjust your schedule to account for changes in your life. So I know that there's many people who, like myself, have a lot of things going on, and sometimes you can't always rely on a dedicated schedule to be the same from time to time, from season to season. Recently, I had some changes in my life, not necessarily bad things, but they kind of forced me into a change required so that I can keep being productive in my authoring. So this can be challenging for some people. Change can be scary, but I'll talk a little bit about my experience, what I've learned from it, and how you might be able to take that into your own authoring so that you can continue making progress. So that's coming up a little bit later, but before we get into the other fun stuff, let's talk about the elephant in the room. I didn't post episodes for the past little while, so as you know, like I mentioned about my schedule being a little chaotic, sometimes it's hard to stay exactly 100% consistent with the podcast. One thing I've determined is I love the podcast so much that I don't want to give it up. I like talking to you. I love meeting other authors. I love, having the shared experience of what it's like having a lot of things going on in your life, but still having this passion, this draw for writing and publishing. So that's why I'm still here. Hopefully I'll be able to figure out my schedule a little bit better. I've talked about wanting to do more interviews. The desire is still there. There's definitely interest in it, but with the recent shift of the podcast, I think there's a number of people who, they might not feel comfortable talking about productivity, talking about hacks and different insights into being efficient and productive as an author in a busy world. But, if they are, then I'll definitely have them on there. If you're that person who feels like, hey, I've learned one thing or another, or I use X tool to do this, definitely let me know. I'd love to talk to you. But in the meantime, it's me again today. This is a solo episode, so I'll try to recap everything that's happened since the last time we spoke without going into too many details because, let's be honest, you don't need every little minute detail about everything that's going on. So, as per usual, we can start with the Homestead things. I always mention the weather, and the reason I mention the weather so much is because it affects our life in managing the animals. It affects the health of the animals. So this has got to be the strangest winter we've ever had since we've had animals. Now, granted, some of that time was down in Utah. We're now in Idaho, where a majority of the winters have been kind of the same. They get pretty cold about January and into February for a few weeks. It's negative degrees. We have a lot of snow. But that's just not been the case this year. Today, coincidentally, was cold, but for the most part, we've had mid-40s and 50s in January and February. It's been very strange. We've dealt with a lot more muck than we've had to in the past because normally things are frozen at this point, and we don't have to deal with that until March or April, really, depending on the year. But it's just been constant. So just trying to keep everything clean, keeping them healthy. Fortunately, we've had no health problems yet. But still, it just feels like we're dancing on the edge of danger with this crazy weather that we've been having. The kids have been having a blast, though. They're going outside. They're playing with friends. They love being outside in the spring-like weather. They are lamenting a little bit because they love sledding. We have a little hill in the far end of our backyard where they like to sled, and they haven't been able to do that this year because there hasn't really been snow. The past few days, we got a couple inches of snow, but it's already melting, which, once again, kind of odd. Usually when we get snow in Idaho at about this time, it will freeze before you even have a chance to get it off the ground, and then it just becomes this solid, hard-packed ball of ice, or I guess just layer of ice. So, unusual, but it kind of is what it is. The animals themselves are doing very well. One recent shift that happened in our life, in a positive way, was that I started helping with the milking. I say that as if I haven't been helping. I always do the chores in the morning. I do the cleanup and the feeding and the water and all the things that my wife usually milks. But in an effort to try to streamline nights better, we're milking twice a day. So we milk in the morning, we milk at night. We shifted the milking earlier in the afternoon, and I take care of that while my wife makes dinner and gets things prepared. That's just helped us get to bed a lot earlier, which we've been trying to do for years, really. And it's great. I will have to say, the first time I did it last week, my forearms were screaming at me because I don't know if you know anything about hand milking, but the way you do it, it's not like it is in the movies. It's not like pulling up and down. That's not how it works. It actually, you have to squeeze it. So your grip strength is important for one. And two, just the repeated motion of squeezing your hands over and over just destroys your forearms. Now, they're a little bit stronger now since I've been doing it for a good couple of weeks. But the first time I did it, my arms were like numb. So I guess I should be exercising my forearms a little bit better. The other thing is Lucy, and that's our cow, our male cow, she had to get used to me. Not that she's scared of me. She's comfortable with me. She respects me. I'm in there with her all the time, feeding her, cleaning up. But I don't normally milk her. So when I first called her last week, she kind of peeked her head around the corner like, what? What are you doing here? And it took me a minute to get her out of the pen and onto the stand. I think she's a little more used to me now. She also shuffles when she doesn't know someone. So for the first few days... So if you know anything about a giant cow, and when you're trying to milk them, she gets locked in this like stanchion thing. So the best way to describe it is it's like a platform of wood, and then there's vertical planks of wood. One of them slides back and forth, and you lock their neck inside of it. So it sounds scarier than it actually is. It's loose. It doesn't hurt her. She's used to it. It just prevents her skull from being able to be pulled back. So the reason that's important is if your cow's moving all over the place, they're going to step in your bucket. They're going to kick over your bucket while you're milking, and it's a pain. She still has enough room to shift forward and backwards. For the most part, she stays. But when she's feeling particularly cheeky, she will try to kick the bucket over. I don't know if it's on purpose or if she's just like uncomfortable or just doesn't want to stand there. But you just have to be on your toes. So while you're milking, you have to pay attention to her subtle shifts. And yeah, sometimes I have to put my arm out to block her leg. She respects me enough that she won't like kick me. She's strong enough that she could kick me over, but she doesn't. She feels my arm and she stops trying to kick. So that's been something that I had to figure out to keep the milk clean and from being tipped over. So kind of a learning curve. So that shift in the afternoon kind of adjusted. I would do author things right after work sometimes. So now that's not available, which means I have to do it other times. I decided to start getting up earlier in the morning, for better or for worse. So in order to do that, I have to go to bed a little bit earlier, and because now we're doing that, it's all working out. But I'll talk a little bit more about that schedule shift later. The pigs themselves are getting more and more messy, and I don't mean from like a manure perspective. They're just muddy because of this weather. They're just covered in mud constantly, and they roll in it. I mean, they're pigs. You've seen this before. The difference is most pigs are short hair, or a lot of pigs you see, at least in the movies and in the slaughterhouse, or on the farms, I should say. They have short hair. Ours have really thick, long, curly hair. So they're kind of cute, but when they're muddy, they're less cute. So just kind of stay away from them. I swear a pig will bite your hand off if you're not careful. Not because they're mad, but they want to eat all the time. So when I'm feeding them, I just have to keep my hands out of the way. Otherwise, they might nibble on my fingers. So other than that, they're just digging these deep pits. I've talked about it before, but they're even worse than they were before. And to add to that, they still like to drain their water. I've talked about this before. Now their water has these holes to fill into. So there's just these lakes that freeze and unfreeze that they're having a hard time saturating into the ground because the pigs have been doing this for so long. So yeah, they're just kind of muddy. I think they're comfortable. They're happy though. There's no issues there. They have dry parts of their pen, so they just hang out in those. They sleep in those. A lot of their pen is dry and clean, but some parts of it are it's just a mess. So it'll be interesting trying to put that all back together for next year's pigs. We're probably just a couple months away from them being taken to the butcher. So after that, we'll have to figure out what to do with our milk, the extra milk we have. I don't think we've really thought that through. Maybe we'll go down to once a day milking, which will be very, very nice. So the other thing is with the chickens, I don't talk about the chickens all that much, but with the chickens, we have this automatic door. So if you know anything about chickens, the predators can get them. So you have to make their pen or their their run, their roost, all of these things very protected from, like, I almost said wombats. We don't have those here. All sorts of things. There's like badgers, there's skunks, there's all sorts of dogs will eat chickens or attack chickens. So in order to keep weasels, that's what I was thinking of. Weasels will get chickens. So we have to close everything off as tight as possible with this thick hardware cloth that I've talked about before. The reason this is relevant is you have a chicken door, and it's kind of irritating to have to go out at sunlight to open it up and go out and in the evening and close it, because if you forget, it's left open and they're in danger. So we got this automatic door. It's legit. It was a little expensive, but it's on a light timer where when there's a certain amount of sunlight, it will come up automatically. And then chickens know when it starts getting dark, they know to go inside because they don't like being out in the dark. They can't see well in the dark, so they will funnel in, and then when it reaches a certain darkness, it will close on its own. We've had that thing for 5 years, 7 years. I don't know, since we last got chickens. We've had it since the beginning. The battery finally died. It lasted forever. And as with many things with a busy person, it took me forever to go buy a new battery. So we had to go out and manually open and close the door for the past few months, and it was kind of irritating. But now it has a new battery, so everything, the balance has been restored. The chickens are happy again. They get to come out and go in, and they're safe at night. We didn't have any chicken casualties, so we're cruising. Everything's great. So we had a couple archery competitions in the last few weeks, which I've talked about. The first one, kids did really well. They had a lot of fun. But I think we're looking forward to a little bit of a quieter period. They are going to be doing archery again, but I don't know if we'll be doing any competitions. And things are warming up, so that won't be quieter. It means more work on the homestead. But, it is what it is. We'll just keep plugging along. So I think that's everything from a homestead perspective. From an author perspective, really just continuing to write. But kind of with my schedule shift and sleeping shifting, it's gotten a little more difficult to stay up on the writing. I can usually get about 1,000 words a day. On the weekdays, on the weekends, I usually spend doing other business-like things. I'm trying to get ahead on short stories, so one thing that I felt a little frustrated with was for my Ream subscription. That's where you can subscribe to get free short stories every month and free access, early access to the chapters of the books I'm about to publish. You get those 6 months early before they get published. I'm trying to get ahead on those short stories. So I'm about 2 ahead now. I'll probably keep writing until I'm 6 short stories ahead, and then I'll step back into finishing the 6th book of the Hidden Heritage series. And then, so making a lot of good progress there. I'm feeling really good about it. I've talked about this before, but my website is better now. You can purchase things through that, both digital and print versions and signed copies. So if you're looking to purchase books, dankinner.com, you can just click on the store there or go to dankinnerbooks.com. They both work. They both route to the same place. So a lot of people in my neighborhood, coincidentally, have started to pick up my book, which is very pleasing. It's very positive. I've met a lot of people in my life and told a lot of people about being an author, but only recently have I started to gain traction by word of mouth of people actually picking up my books and reading them. So feeling really good about that. I've had a lot of amazing feedback of people saying they love it. In fact, one teenager said that my books, the Lightbearer Chronicles, were some of his favorites, in line with the Ranger's Apprentice series. I don't know if you've ever read that. It's an incredible series. Absolutely loved it when I was younger. So that was a huge honor for him to say that to me. I definitely rode that high for a while. Probably still will. Because, someone compared my books to these traditionally published, very well done and very popular books. So it's just like, great. Now the problem I just have to solve is getting them out there. So it's a long game. If you've heard anything about independent publishing or publishing in general, it's a long game. So I'm patient. I'm just looking forward to getting more feedback and hearing more people say that they love the books. I was reflecting, I want to say last week, about the Lightbearer Chronicles and just the experience I had while writing. It was so positive. I'm considering going back and reading it, which is different. I don't generally go back and read the books that I publish, but I know there's some rocky bits to it. I don't intend on re-editing it. It is what it is. But I think there's a certain aspect of magic from a pantsing and or discovery writing perspective, depending on which term you prefer. So I want to go back and kind of remind myself about that experience of writing that book. And I forget what happens in my books pretty easily. So I don't think I'll get bored. I'll be like, oh, that's right. I'd forgotten about this. So that's probably going to be one of my next reads, just to kind of remind myself. Other than that, yeah, everything is kind of going forward. I did officially uninstall Instagram and TikTok from my phones. My phone, I have a single phone. I know some of you listening might be like, but what? Why would you do that? The thing was, it's just like it was not working for me. The only thing that it was positive for was making connections with certain people. But even then, I was not great at doing that. I found that it was a hindrance more than anything. It was distracting me. I may put them back on my phone at some point, but they've been uninstalled for a good 3 or 4 weeks now, and I haven't noticed. It's just been, I haven't noticed in terms of like my productivity hasn't changed. My focus has gotten better. I don't miss it. So we'll see. I think there's something to be said about social media. I'm not urging you to do the same thing. I think it can be great free marketing, so take advantage of it if you can. It was just not working for me, and it was causing more stress than anything. So I think I still have to think through how to get my reach out there. I'm hoping this podcast will reach more people. So if you're listening and you know that there's other people who could benefit from it, let them know. Share it out there. I would love to hear from them and see if they're interested in what I have to say. But yeah, I think that's everything in terms of author updates, which takes us to the topic in general, which is being flexible and making adjustments to your life and your schedule to account for the ebbs and flows of situations in your life. So there's been a number of changes in my life recently. I already mentioned the milking in the afternoon, which kind of upset that time block that I had for authoring. But there's some other major things, such as I'm shifting my sleep schedule. I'm now going to bed earlier, getting up quite a bit earlier. So my body still has to get used to that new circadian rhythm. I'm trying to take advantage of the morning light a little bit better. I do like mornings. I am a morning person, so I don't know why it took me so long to figure this out. Still, my brain gets to the writing period and it's just like, wait, am I supposed to be sleeping now? I'm confused. So, because I was kind of forcing it to stay up at night for many years. So that made the shift. And then increasingly work has gotten pretty wild. Now, I don't tend to do author things during the work hours, but when I say it gets crazy, it's started to consume more mental power. And that kind of leaves me more drained than it has in the past. When work is in a space where, I may be tired, I might be slightly overwhelmed, but I get to the end of the day and I can still think, then I'm not too worried about it. In the last few months, work has reached a peak stress level. And like I said, I feel pretty drained by the time I even get to any creative bits. And the only thing I want to do is sit and stare at a wall or possibly read a book, which is happening more often than not. So that, has made me realize I've got to make some shifts in terms of how I go about writing and taking advantage of the time that I have. So what that means is no longer are there large blocks of time where I can invest into editing or writing or creating and editing this podcast. More so now I've broken those down into small component parts that take creating or doing them over small bits of time. They're more scattered time blocks throughout the evening and or early morning to take advantage of the time that my brain is awake and can handle that type of work. Before, I was able to schedule a decent 30-minute to an hour block every day or a couple 30-minute blocks. Now I'm resorting to, well, I've got 10 minutes here, I've got 10 minutes there, and it's not ideal. In terms of code switching, productivity is not the easiest, but if you can train your brain to be able to let go of one task and move to another, then it can work okay. It's definitely not ideal. It always works better to have longer time blocks. So I also have to come to terms with the lower level of productivity. So that is something that's a little bit harder to swallow. I think sometimes we're hard on ourselves when it comes to not being the same as we were in the past. I can think of times in my author business career where things were smooth, where my job was relatively smooth. It didn't consume a lot of mental power. I was good at it. I knew what I was doing. And by the time I got to my blocked writing session, there were no issues in terms of focus and or productivity. And it's hard not to feel bad about my current productivity because it's much different than it was then. Now, my life is much different. My situation is much different, so I can't technically compare the two. But I don't know about you, I'm hard on myself. I think, well, I should be doing better. I should be able to get more done. I should be able to write more words down or have completed this editing in the same amount of time as I did 3 years ago. But the fact of the matter is, it's just not where I am today. So having to be flexible, having to adjust my schedule to account for what I need to is important. When things come up in your life that they may feel like they prevent you from making the progress you want to make, I've found that you have two choices. You can either stop doing what you want to do and say, like, now is not the right time. I'll pick it up when I have more time. There's nothing wrong with that per se, but I will say it's even more difficult to pick it back up because you tend to get used to living life without that thing, even if that thing is very important to you. That might be writing, that might be editing, that might be creating in general. So I would caution you, there's a difference between taking a break because you need it to kind of recuperate your mind and get back into the creative space, and stopping because you feel like now is not the right time, I don't have time for it, I'll pick it up later. Once again, nothing wrong with it, but it is what it is. The second option is, how can I adjust my schedule to at least maintain this connection I have with this thing I want to do, in this case, which is authoring. So even though I've reduced my times significantly to writing, to editing, to doing the things that I would love to be doing full time, I still have that open connection, that reminder that, no, this still feels good. This still feels right. I'm still enjoying this. But I also conversely have to accept that my progress is slower than I hoped. Progress is better than no progress. And so in my mind, it's working better for me. Now, a lot of this is a mental game. A lot of this is, positive affirmations. A lot of this is just really focusing on the ultimate long-term goal and or reminding yourself why you like doing this. I've heard many people say that when the creative work or the authoring starts to feel like a job, starts to feel like a chore, it takes the fun out of it. And that's true. I started feeling that somewhat recently because it had started to shift into more check boxes. Like, oh, yep, I did 10 minutes of writing, checkbox. Oh, I did 15 minutes of writing, checkbox. Or I met X word count, checkbox. There's nothing wrong with having goals, but when you're kind of delving out of the creative place into the more work-based productivity only, you start to lose the magic of writing, which is the whole point of writing, in my opinion. You're writing a story because it's important to you. It's in your heart. It's in your mind. You have something exciting to share. Stories are written to be shared, not to be held close to you. So if you ever reach a place where, something's not right, you get to your writing session, you're like, I don't want to. I don't feel good about this. Then maybe you need to reevaluate what changes do you need to make to get back to that magic, to get back to that comfort of the creative aspects of being an author. Do you need to reduce the time that you spend day to day? Do you need to adjust the time of day when you address it, right? Some people think better in the afternoon. Some people think better in the morning. Some people coincidentally think better at night. I know many authors that write very, very well from the 10 to 11 o'clock hour. And if that works for you, you need to shift. And as we get older, as life changes, that might need to shift. You might need to move your writing time sometime else in the day. But you really need to be sensitive to that and being willing to make that shift when you get to a place where it's like, now something doesn't feel quite right. Something needs to change. Trust your instinct, trust your gut, recognize that you know yourself more than you think, and just be willing to accept those changes and implement those changes when they come up. I can't even tell you the number of years it took me to thinking about Instagram and TikTok and just struggling and struggling and struggling. I know my struggle is not alone. I know there's a lot of people that have the same situation. Some people push through it better than others, but I almost stopped or uninstalled those apps for years. And it was really in the last month or so when I realized how much time I was sinking into those with such little time that I have. Even 45 minutes of wasted energy in one day because I'm flipping through reels is detrimental. That's 45 minutes, and I just couldn't afford it. I clearly had no self-control to not open them up. I'm outing myself, but let's be honest here. They were there. I wasn't going to not open them. So now that I'm trying to create a more healthy experience or barrier with myself, and I have more space to get back into the creative pieces of it, hopefully I can get to a place where I can start posting again, maybe get out there, since I do need to find more people. I need to broadcast my books out there. Until then, I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing. I'm going to keep being productive and pushing out these stories, even if the influence I have is only for a small audience. That's okay, because these stories are important to me. They're important to other people. I know a lot of people really enjoy them. So I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing and reevaluate every week, every month, every year. Just reevaluate and make sure that it's still working for me. So I hope that's helpful. If you understand what I'm feeling, or maybe you've been through this before, maybe you're in the middle of it, definitely give these things a try. If you have any insight yourself on how you've been in this situation in the past and gotten yourself out of it, would love to hear your insights. Would love to see you comment or let me know where you're listening, what thoughts you have about this topic and the podcast. And if you would, share with your friends, family, anybody who might be interested in any aspects of my life. That's the homesteading, the authoring, or just the kind of productivity mindset that I'm now bringing into the podcast. Would love to hear from you. And if you have any feedback or anything else you'd like to hear more of, if you have questions for me, please put them in there. I'm happy to answer questions. Would love to know what you want to hear more about. But thanks again for listening. I look forward to talking to you next time, whenever that is. I don't know that I can commit to next week, but whenever that is, would love to. Can't wait to talk to you again, and I hope to hear from you. Thanks.